Welcome back everyone to the Justice for Aaron Brady campaign. As most of you are aware, we are scrutinising the podcast created by Ian Doyle in association with the Irish Sun and the Irish Sun editor Stephen Breen. These podcasts follow the career of Mr. Pat Marry, and we have already scrutinised 3 of these podcasts. We just finished 11 and we had previously done 10 and 9 obviously, and we've shown quite clearly the inaccuracies, the lies and how misleading the information in those podcasts actually were, and how they were fluffed up to try and create a case that simply does not exist. Now, we took a break from scrutinising the podcast and we re-released some videos we created some time past in relation to 3 of the main protagonists in the American aspect of Aaron's investigation, namely Daniel Cahill, Anthony, and of course Christopher the Layer, who we've shown quite clearly during the course of particularly podcast number 11. Christopher told a tissue of lies, and he was easily helped to do that by Mr. Pat Marry and Detective Bobby Ogle during the taking of a statement in America. And Christopher the Layer done this to save his own skin and to remain in America and not be deported back to Ireland. So what we're going to do now is have a look at podcast number 12, and hopefully if we've gone over the information again on these 3 gentlemen, you'll see how that fits in, and we can show very clearly in this podcast number 12 in the series Making the Detective, how the evidence is completely misleading, misrepresented, and it's an absolute tissue of lies. Now, I know we have asked you on a number of occasions, if you have time, please listen to podcast number 12. Listen to them all if you can at all, but please listen to podcast number 12. And if there's any issues or points in it that you think we haven't covered, please contact us and let us know. But we want to show very clearly how dramatic license has been applied to these podcasts, and actually how these people are actually, because the lies are so bad in the beginning, have to tell lies about the lies. Is the easiest way to put it. And you can see how it has been created and manufactured into a story that simply does not exist. Now, there's actually only 3 minutes of the podcast here. I'm just going to break it down into little bite-sized pieces. Initially, to show the banality of it and the dramatic license that's been applied to events that simply didn't happen or take place. And then the more serious aspect of, again, lies and covering over the information that is actually more important and actually relevant to what happened in New York. So we're just going to listen to a little bit just about Daniel Cahill here, just a couple of seconds, and then we'll just make a quick comment on that.
On a crisp evening, during New York St. Patrick's Week celebrations in 2015, Aaron Brady sat at the bar of the Coachman's Inn. It attracted a rough enough crowd, and punch-ups weren't uncommon. It was a place he spent a lot of time, most Saturday nights in fact. He got to know the staff and customers well. Not that everyone there enjoyed his company. Daniel Cahill, a Dubliner around Brady's age, was working behind the bar. He could hear a one-upmanship battle about to get underway between Brady and his companions. Cahill was used to hearing Brady's boasts once a certain level of alcohol was consumed, and rolled his eyes as he bent down to restock a shelving unit with Guinness glasses. It began with the usual statements. Who'd take on who in a fight? Which man could drink the most? But Brady had an obscure ace card up his sleeve. He was the only man in that group that knew what it felt like to take someone's life. Not just anyone's life, but he knew how it felt to take the life of a cop. The other men were familiar at this stage with Brady's boast. It wasn't the first time they'd heard it.
That very short clip is just a brief introduction into this episode 12 of Making the Detective. And it shows the dramatic license once again, which really doesn't mean anything at all. But let's apply a little bit of common sense to this. So we have Cahill walking behind the bar on a busy St. Patrick's Day in 2015, and he kneels down to fill Guinness glasses into a shelf, and he can still hear the conversation going on behind the bar, which is complete dramatic license and absolute nonsense. But it shows how willing Ian Doyle is to create a narrative and to create a backdrop to a story to try and give some credence to a tissue of lies. Now, on that 17th of March 2015, that is the day of the event where Daniel Cahill and this next man, Anthony, who's about to be mentioned, actually attacked Aaron in his own apartment. So Aaron was actually working that day, which can be confirmed by his employers and the details from his employment. So Ian Doyle and the podcast is telling the tissue of lies there, but it's very important just to show how they're creating a backdrop to try and give some credence to those lies. Now we're going to get into the most serious part of it now, and this is where Anthony comes into the podcast and is mentioned by Ian Doyle, and obviously this information he has been peddled by Mr. Pat Marry. So we'll just listen to that now.
The bar was busy, and while Brady was regaling the group on how it felt to have blood on his hands, a man pushed up alongside to try and order a drink. He didn't intend to eavesdrop on the men, but Brady became aware he had overheard some of the more incriminating aspects of his statements. He asked the man to step outside for a quick word, which he obliged, as he didn't want to cause a scene. The man was trying to de-escalate the situation to Brady as quickly as he could. He didn't want any trouble. Before he got the chance to speak, Brady pummeled him repeatedly in the head. He grabbed him by the collar and got close to his face. "Keep your fucking mouth shut," Brady told him, as he released his grip on his shirt. The assault didn't cause much of a scene in the Coachman's Inn, as it was one of many fights that week. Aaron Brady got on with his night, and the injured party went home with a gash above his eye that would eventually leave a scar. A bad reminder of a night where he found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time.
In this short 40 or 50 second clip, it shows very, very clearly, Mr. Doyle, that your podcast is a total disgrace, as we have said in the previous 3 episodes. But this 50-second clip really encapsulates what the authorities were capable of doing and what they did do in order to create and manufacture a story. And now it's been peddled by allegedly investigative journalists. Now, anything we've said in the videos over the last week about either Daniel Cahill, Christopher, or this gentleman here, Anthony, is all verifiable. We haven't made any of it up. It can all be checked out, and the vast majority of it is on public record. And there's a vast amount of information about Christopher and Anthony that we haven't even divulged yet, about some of the things they got up to while they're living here in Ireland and why they're not welcome back here in Ireland. And how this gentleman here, who saddled up to the bar and shuffled his way into the bar and overheard Aaron Brady saying something, which is absolutely nonsense, because Doyle, Breen and Pat Marry are trying to say that Aaron was going around shouting this everywhere in bars and all over Yonkers and Woodlawns. Well, if he's going around shouting it and mouthing it at all these people, why did he pick on this fella? Because he overheard something. So that doesn't make sense. If you just think about it for 1 second. So this gentleman here, let's have another little look at him. This is what this gentleman is about here. The cash, the ammunitions, £30,000 worth of cash. ammunition, £30,000 worth of cocaine, and an arrest warrant laid for him here in Northern Ireland. So that's the calibre of this man here. This man here is a first cousin of Christopher the Laird. And you heard at the end of that clip that allegedly Aaron Brady hit him and cut him above the eye, and he went home. He was living with Christopher and Christopher's brother, and he never told anyone this great thing about this fella, Aaron Brady, had attacked him because he overheard him saying something about more than a yard. And in return, when we look at it, Christopher never told anyone else either. Not but Christopher the Laird did try to get his cousin to make up this story, but Anthony hadn't the stomach to go through with it then. And that's when he wrote the letter via his lawyer in America to Mark Phillips and on Garda Síochána that he didn't want anything more to do with Aaron Brady's case. He was put under severe duress by the authorities to make a story. And if Drew Harris looks at the interaction, we have requested it, Drew Harris and GSOC looks at the interactions with Mary and cousin Christopher, it's obvious what Christopher has mentioned, that there was someone beside him at the bar in the coachman's when he alleged Aaron said it to him. And we know for a fact that Aaron wasn't there. So all this is there to be seen and to be investigated. Now, Anthony has a cut over his eye. And Anthony got that cut over his eye on that night. Because Anthony, Daniel Cahill, Davy and Ado were the four men who attacked Aaron in his apartment that night because of lies told by, or a story told by a gentleman called Niall in relation to a girl who was sharing the apartment with Aaron, and that girl was Ado's girlfriend. Now we are making individual appeals to the three men, Anthony, Ado and Davy. Yous know what happened that night, that yous were in the room with Daniel Cahill and yous give Aaron a very serious beating. Now Aaron left the apartment shortly after that with two young men. They went to Daniel Cahill's apartment where Daniel Cahill was. And Aaron told Daniel Cahill that what he was told in relation to the girlfriend and Ado was lies. And Anthony did say something to Aaron in that setting, and Aaron did hit him. And that's how he has a cut over his eye, we believe. But these 40 seconds hide all that. And a lot of that information is there readily for any investigative journalist to see. And if the investigative journalist looked into that 40, 50 seconds, we can prove that Christopher is a liar once again. And we know he's a liar. We know Anthony's telling lies. And probably most importantly of all, we can prove beyond any shadow of a doubt, that Daniel Cahill is a liar also, and told a tissue of lies to save himself in New York. Now, it's just a very short piece at the beginning of Making the Detective 12. Please go and have a look at it and listen to it and see that it is a complete tissue of lies. Now, we're going to have a very quick listen to just a few seconds more of the podcast, and this shows where Pat Murray is obviously up to his neck in telling a tissue of lies and giving false information about these people who allegedly came forward. So just going to very quickly listen to this little clip here.
2 years later, in 2017, he answered a knock at his door. He was surprised to find two Homeland Security officers looking to talk. They had some questions they wanted to ask him. He wasn't the only one though. He was just one of 67 people the agents had on their list. The work behind the scenes was growing, and it was only a matter of time before Aaron Brady would have to answer questions of his own.
The word spread Irish cops were in town, witnesses were found who had crucial evidence in the case.
There was approximately 5 persons who came forward with information in where they stated that Aaron Brady had mentioned he was the one who shot the guard.
We've heard another few seconds there from the podcast Making the Detective, and we followed that up with a statement from Mr. Pat Marry, Senior Investigating Officer. And again, one contradicts the other. We heard in the clip that 2 detectives appeared at Anthony's door 2 years after the event in 2017. And Pat Marry's telling us approximately 5 people came forward. These people came forward, and we've always said this from the beginning, and that's why our library and our archive is so important, to show that people did not come forward. They were put under duress and were coerced to make false statements. And none more so than Anthony. And we've proven that Anthony, his first cousin of Christopher, is a liar. And we can prove also that Anthony is a liar. And once again, we can prove that Pat Marry is a liar, because those 2 clips run together tells us exactly that. Because even if you just go back to the previous podcast, number 11, we know that Molly Staunton, 2 detectives landed at her door. And she too may have been coerced or put under pressure because of issues she had with NYPD. So I hope that shows very clearly, those 3 minutes I think there in total show clearly how the story is, number 1, Ian Doyle, Stephen Breen and the Irish Sun are helping the authorities perpetuate a story that simply doesn't exist, and are actually creating a backdrop for a tissue of lies. We've shown again how vital information has been totally omitted by these so-called investigative journalists. And I will repeat once again, in relation to Anthony and Christopher, all the information we have put out there, Ian Doyle and all the investigative journalists are more than aware that it is fact. And if it wasn't fact, we would be obviously told very, very quickly on Aaron's social media sites and on the website. So we do ask you, please, to like, comment and share the videos. We're having serious issues. Once again, we have been continually attacked on Aaron's social media sites, and there's been quite a serious attack on the YouTube channel. So once again, we have to keep asking, please like, comment and share, because we do need those algorithms to work on our behalf and make Aaron's campaign sites that little bit stronger. We'll continue on the same vein with this Making a Detective 12. Please listen to it. If there's anything you think we're missing, if there's anything you think we're omitting, if there's anything you think we're trying to mislead anyone with, please ask us and call us out on it. And we can stand over everything we are seeing on this, and we'll appeal to the people who made this. Someone told me over the course of the weekend that this podcast was nominated for awards or something. So if you, the Irish public, are happy with being peddled a load of nonsense, lies, misleading information and just sloppy journalism, we do need you to speak up and just ask for the whole story. That's all. If the whole story's out there, everyone can make the decision there. But this man, Anthony, was wanted for, and is still wanted, large amount of Class A drugs, some Class B drugs and cash. The man was a drug supplier. And this is the type of people Pat Marry and now Ian Doyle are eulogising about on our airwaves. So once again, thank you for joining us. We're going to continue with Making the Detective number 12 and looking very closely now of how Daniel Cahill's involvement was glossed over by Ian Doyle and co. Once again, thank you. Please like, comment and share, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.